Hello, good morning, and welcome to Unacademy, a one-stop destination for the English medium civil services aspirants. Before we initiate today's discussion, I have an important announcement to make. We are proud and super excited to launch an online classroom program for CSE 2025 in English medium. There will be two batches, morning batch and evening batch, taught by the teachers who have years of experience guiding successful candidates. We will be starting with Indian polity in the morning batch, taught by me, and we will be starting with the economics batch in the evening, taught by another very popular teacher. The details you will get to know very soon. Should you wish to enroll in this program and kickstart your IAS preparation, please call us at 8585858585. Super excited to have you in our program, and let's get started with the analysis of today's The Hindu newspaper. These are the topics that we shall be discussing today. Let's look at a newspaper article on page number 1 of the Delhi edition of The Hindu, relevant for prelims as well as GS paper 2. Posthumous Bharat Ratna for Bihar ex-Chief Minister Mr. Karpoori Thakur. Bharat Ratna is India's highest civilian award, and this award was constituted or instituted in the year 1954. But these awards are kept at a different footing from the Padma Awards. Padma Awards, Padma Vibhushan, Padma Bhushan, Padma Shri, those are Padma Awards. Bharat Ratna is kept at a different footing. Bharat Ratna was institutionalized in the year 1954, and maximum 3 individuals can be awarded Bharat Ratna in a particular year. It is not necessary to award Bharat Ratna every year, but whenever it is awarded, maximum 3 individuals, 3 recipients are allowed. In 1954, Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan, scientist C.V. Raman, and C. Rajagopalachari, they were awarded the Bharat Ratna. If you look at the history, till the year 2011, this highest civilian award, Bharat Ratna, used to be awarded to those who would perform spectacularly in the fields of art, literature, science, public service. So these were the areas. If you have contributed significantly in these areas, Bharat Ratna could be awarded to you by the President of India. But in the year 2011, this ambit was expanded. Now Bharat Ratna can be awarded to an individual for his service or performance in any field of human endeavor, not restricted to arts, literature, science and public service, but any field of human endeavor. Maximum, as I told you, 3 can be awarded in a particular year. The recipient of this award gets a sanad, which means a certificate signed by the President of India, gets a medallion as well. But this award, important fact for prelims, does not carry any monetary grant. But be that as it may, since 1954, when this award was institutionalized, this award was also suspended twice. These are details important for prelims, and in fact, in one particular prelims examination, this statement was asked in the examination. This award was suspended twice. When? In 1978, when Janata Party came to power after the emergency was revoked, Morarji Desai became the Prime Minister, Bharat Ratna, Padma Awards were suspended. Again, in 1993 onwards till about 1997, Padma Awards were also suspended, Bharat Ratna was also suspended. Why? Because there was a case filed in the Supreme Court. What was this case all about? Balaji Raghavan versus Union of India. What was the case? If you look at Article 18 of the Constitution, Article 18 talks about abolition of titles. No title can be conferred by the state except academic titles and military distinctions. No other title apart from academic and military distinctions can be conferred by the state. Now the question before the court was whether these Padma Awards, whether Bharat Ratna is also part of title under Article 18, which has been abolished. Ultimately, Supreme Court said in Balaji Raghavan case that although titles have been abolished by the Constitution under Article 18, that does not mean that merit should not be recognized. The Padma Awards, these are not titles within the meaning of Article 18. These are basically awards given to those individuals who have done spectacularly well in different fields of human endeavor. But then there is a guideline. The guideline is this award cannot be used as prefix or suffix to a name. If at all you want to include it, you should mention that I was awarded Bharat Ratna by the President, or I am the recipient of the Bharat Ratna award. But you cannot call Bharat Ratna Pranab Mukherjee. Although this guideline is also flouted every now and then, but this is something that you need to keep in mind. Ideally, Bharat Ratna should not be used as prefix or suffix to your name. But something else. There has been a lot of controversy surrounding the award Bharat Ratna. Number one, if you look at the list of the recipients of Bharat Ratna, it is dominated by politicians. And every now and then you will hear WhatsApp forwards from the WhatsApp University. You will also hear newspaper articles and details saying Pandit Nehru awarded himself Bharat Ratna. Later on, Shrimati Indira Gandhi also awarded herself Bharat Ratna. Later on, Rajiv Gandhi was also awarded Bharat Ratna. So 3 members of a family were given Bharat Ratnas, and this Bharat Ratna list, recipient list, is dominated by politicians. And there are other genuine individuals who deserve Bharat Ratna, but they have not been awarded. For example, Sachin Ramesh Tendulkar. On the day he announced his retirement from international cricket, the same day he was awarded, or his name was proposed for the Bharat Ratna. But what about others? Why not Vishwanathan Anand? Why not Major Dhyan Chand? Why this list is dominated by politicians, and why not somebody like Sam Manekshaw, Field Marshal Sam Manekshaw? Why not somebody like M.S. Swaminathan, who is revered for his contribution to the field of agriculture? Why not somebody like Verghese Kurian, who started Amul revolution in India? So controversy number one is that this list is dominated by politicians. Second, not just posthumous awards, these awards have been given once to Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya. There is nothing wrong in awarding Mr. Malviya Bharat Ratna, but the point is, Mr. Madan Mohan Malviya died before the independence of this country. Previously, the convention used to be that Bharat Ratna would be awarded to those who die after the independence of this country. But now, if Madan Mohan Malviya was also conferred with Bharat Ratna, we don't know where to stop. Because if Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya can be conferred with Bharat Ratna, what about Chhatrapati Shivaji? What about Emperor Ashok? What about Akbar? If you want to confer Bharat Ratna on Akbar as well. So the point is, we don't know where to draw the line. So ideally, Bharat Ratna should be awarded to those who died after independence, not before that, because ultimately we don't know where to put an end, where to put a full stop. Bharat Ratna, it is not necessary to award Bharat Ratna to citizens of India, although it is India's highest civilian award, but it is not awarded only to the citizens. We have Mother Teresa, who was not a born citizen of India, but a naturalized citizen of India, she was also awarded Bharat Ratna. Two foreigners also have been awarded Bharat Ratna. Nelson Mandela from South Africa, Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan, also known as the Frontier Gandhi, he was also awarded Bharat Ratna. But is it true that Pandit Nehru awarded himself Bharat Ratna? For that, we need to understand what is the process of awarding Bharat Ratna. If we look at Padma Awards, normally there is a committee which recommends names to the Prime Minister. Prime Minister then forwards these names to the President, and President would announce these Padma Awards, Padma Vibhushan, Padma Bhushan, Padma Shri. In fact, states are also asked, if you have recommendations, please share these recommendations with us, and if we find it viable, we will forward it to the President. So there is some sort of a nomination thing that happens in Padma Awards. But when it comes to Bharat Ratna, there is no such nomination committee. There is no such structure. Any name proposed by the Prime Minister is forwarded to the President, and it is binding on the President to award Bharat Ratna to that individual. So the process is simple. On the recommendations of the Prime Minister, Bharat Ratna is awarded by the President. But is this process mentioned anywhere? No. Is there any law which governs this? No. Is there a notification in the Gazette which governs this? No. This is part of convention, unwritten rule. And this convention, unwritten rule is that Prime Minister recommends to the President the name of the recipient of the Bharat Ratna, and the President has to confer, award Bharat Ratna on that individual. But then in 1954, Pandit Nehru was returning from a successful tour to European countries as well as Soviet Union. Then he came to India, and at the airport, he was received by none other than the President of India, Dr. Rajendra Prasad himself, which goes against protocol. The President of India is the highest civilian in India, is the first citizen of India. In the warrant of precedence, his name is at serial number 1. But violating and disregarding the protocol, he went to the airport to receive Pandit Nehru, and next day there was a banquet, a feast. And in that ceremony, Dr. Rajendra Prasad announces that we are conferring Bharat Ratna on Pandit Nehru. And Pandit Nehru was taken by surprise. Pandit Nehru was not aware of such a development. And in fact, Dr. Rajendra Prasad said, we are conferring Bharat Ratna on Pandit Nehru because he is the architect of the modern India. He has done spectacularly well for the development of India. Dr. Rajendra Prasad himself said that I have done something unconstitutional, because normally it is the Prime Minister who should recommend to me who should be the recipient of the Bharat Ratna. But I have violated the Constitution. I have done something unconstitutional by, without consulting the Prime Minister, I have announced the recipient of the Bharat Ratna, who is the Prime Minister himself. And we need to understand that Pandit Nehru and Dr. Rajendra Prasad, they also shared a shaky relationship. Pandit Nehru wanted C. Rajaji to become the President of India. But it was Sardar Patel who wanted Dr. Rajendra Prasad to become the President of India. There were a series of disagreements between Dr. Rajendra Prasad and Pandit Nehru when it came to, we discussed yesterday, the inauguration of the Somnath Temple in 1951, where Pandit Nehru wanted Dr. Rajendra Prasad not to go to inaugurate Somnath Temple as the President of India. He can go as an individual, but not as the President. That was another disagreement. There were a series of disagreements on the Hindu code bills, which were piloted by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Dr. Rajendra Prasad was not happy about this. That was another line of difference between Pandit Nehru and Dr. Rajendra Prasad. But nevertheless, these two were statesmen, and even without consulting the Prime Minister, the President conferred Bharat Ratna on Pandit Nehru. And after the 1971 war between India and Pakistan, which led to the emergence of Bangladesh as an independent entity, President V.V. Giri conferred Bharat Ratna on Srimati Indira Gandhi. Who conferred Bharat Ratna on Pandit Nehru? Dr. Rajendra Prasad. Few years later, Bharat Ratna was awarded to Dr. Rajendra Prasad. Who conferred Bharat Ratna on Srimati Indira Gandhi? President V.V. Giri. Some years later, few years later, Bharat Ratna was awarded to Mr. V.V. Giri. Similar to who called Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, Mahatma. Rabindranath Tagore. Who called Rabindranath Tagore Gurudev? Mahatma Gandhi. So it's like symbiotic relationship of give and take. But that is what you need to understand from this topic. Posthumous Bharat Ratna awarded to former Chief Minister of Bihar, Karpoori Thakur. Clear? Let's look at another important editorial, limits and borders. We have BSF, Border Security Force, which is basically a central force. It comes under the jurisdiction of the Ministry of Home Affairs. What is the job of the BSF? To patrol borders, to guard borders along India and Pakistan, India and Bangladesh. Who is responsible for patrolling and guarding our border, or let's say the line of actual control between India and China? For that we have Indian Army and ITBP, Indo-Tibetan Border Police and Indian Army. They guard the border or the line of actual control between India and China. But what about BSF? Primarily responsible for patrolling the borders between India and Pakistan and Bangladesh. Which are these states? For example, we have West Bengal, we have Assam, we have Punjab, we have Gujarat, we have Rajasthan. What is the jurisdiction of BSF in the border areas of these states? Jurisdiction in the sense, BSF would have the power to seize, BSF would have the power to arrest and patrol these border areas. But please understand, in the distribution of powers under the Constitution of India, under 7th schedule of the Constitution, we have union list, we have state list, we have concurrent list. In state list, police is under the domain of the state. Law and order is under the domain of the state. So if police is under the control of the state and BSF is under the control of the center, wouldn't there be a clash between the police and the central force when it comes to these states? For that, we have to define their jurisdiction. Although this jurisdiction is not spelled out on a map, we don't know what should be the jurisdiction on the map of India. But normally it used to be 15 kilometers. That means along the border, within 15 kilometers, this would be the jurisdiction of the BSF. BSF would be responsible for patrolling, for arresting, for seizing, which basically means when it comes to NDPS Act, when it comes to Customs Act, when it comes to the Army Act, so the border areas may be used for illegal trafficking of drugs, for arms delivery, drones, drugs. The job of the BSF would be to ensure that we seize these illegal drugs, we seize these illegal arms, and we ensure that we are patrolling the border. But BSF does not have the prosecuting power. In a sense, if you commit a crime within your state, the police has the power to arrest you and then file an FIR or a charge sheet with the court, which means the police can be prosecuting you. But that is not the power of the BSF. BSF cannot file a charge sheet. BSF cannot prosecute you. Within 24 hours, whenever BSF is arresting somebody within its jurisdiction, it has to hand over this individual to the local police. And all along, there has been coordination between the police and the BSF. But in October 2021, what the central government did? Central government enhanced the jurisdiction of the BSF, saying in Bengal, Assam, Punjab, the jurisdiction has been expanded from 15 kilometers to 50 kilometers. In Gujarat, jurisdiction used to be 80 kilometers. Now this 80 kilometers has been reduced to 50 kilometers. In Rajasthan, the jurisdiction used to be 50 kilometers. It will continue as the 50 kilometers. The central government was asked, why did you do this? Why did you increase the jurisdiction from 15 to 50 kilometers for some states, reduce the jurisdiction from 80 to 50 kilometers for Gujarat, and kept the jurisdiction of BSF at 50 for Rajasthan? The government said, this is uniformity. We want to treat states in a uniform fashion. That is why we are keeping the jurisdiction of the BSF uniform at 50 kilometers, which is for all these border states. But the governments of Punjab and West Bengal, they have been arguing that this is against the federal principles. This violates federalism in India because you are encroaching into the domain of the police, which is under the state list, which is within the legitimate powers of a state government. In fact, in 2012, the then Chief Minister of Gujarat, Mr. Modi, wrote a letter to the Prime Minister of India, Dr. Manmohan Singh, challenging, criticizing the government as to why did you increase the jurisdiction of BSF in the state of Gujarat. So if that was a protest in 2012, now these governments have also protested along the same fashion. But this time, Punjab has approached the Supreme Court, filed a petition under Article 131 of the Constitution. Under Article 131, any dispute between the center and the state can be filed in the Supreme Court, and Supreme Court is the final arbiter of that dispute. Since the court has accepted this petition, now it remains to be seen what will be the final outcome of this case. Because now the court will decide whether center's notification in October 2021, whether it encroaches upon the state subject, and how should the central government increase the limits, local limits within a border area. What are the considerations that the central government has to keep in mind while increasing the jurisdiction of the central forces in a state? These are the two key questions that the court will have to rule. But this editorial says, although the central government may not be wrong in increasing the jurisdiction, but it speaks about miscommunication or absence of communication, absence of accommodation between the state and the central government. If we swear by cooperative federalism, where center and the states, they have to cooperate with each other, the best way this should have been done, or this could have been done, was to first consult these states, and consultation would have been a key to resolve all levels of misunderstanding between the center and the state. That is what you need to understand from this editorial, limits and borders. Clear? Let's look at another article. French journalist receives notice over malicious reporting and visa violations. She's also holding an OCI card. She's married to an Indian, has been staying in India for 22 years, holding an OCI card, and now a notice has been issued to her why this OCI card should not be cancelled. What are the details regarding the OCI card and what are the accusations against this French journalist? And this comes at a time when the French president is going to come to India. The year was 2005. A scheme was launched known as Overseas Citizen of India. This scheme was launched by amending the Citizenship Act of 1955. There was another scheme which was launched by MHA, Ministry of Home Affairs, in 2002, known as Person of Indian Origin, PIO scheme. 2015, Prime Minister Modi went to United States, addressed a massive crowd at the Madison Square and announced the public there, announced the Indian diaspora there, that Mitro, now we will merge the two schemes. PIO scheme will be merged with OCI. And the scheme was also renamed as Overseas Citizen of India Cardholder Scheme. Why cardholder scheme? So that there is no misconception. We do not recognize dual citizenship. You are the citizen of India, you cannot be the citizen of any other country at the same time. Single citizenship is what we value. But when you hear this phrase, overseas citizen of India, it might give a sense that India follows dual citizenship. Just to resolve that misconception, the government said, we are renaming the scheme as Overseas Citizen of India Cardholder. So you are not an overseas citizen of India, you are just holding a card which gives you certain benefits. What are these benefits? Multiple entry to India. Multi-purpose visit to India without visa for your entire life. That means if you have this OCI card, you can come to India without visa for your life. And whether your stay in India is going to be for 6 months or less than 6 months or more than 6 months, doesn't matter. You don't have to report to the Foreigners Regional Registration Office. You don't have to do that. But then there are some certain conditions. Conditions such as you cannot undertake, if you're holding this OCI card, you cannot undertake missionary work aimed at converting people into Christianity. You cannot undertake mountaineering. You cannot undertake journalism work without the special permission of the government of India. Accusation against this French journalist is that she is being reporting, carrying out journalism work in India by reporting incidents aimed at Naxal hit areas, by conveying reports related to the atrocities or the alleged atrocities on the Christians. She's been reporting from Nepal and Ladakh as well. So she is carrying out journalism activities without taking the permission of the central government, which means she is violating the rules, and as such, her OCI card should be cancelled. And now a notice has been issued to her. So what is this OCI card? How is it linked with the PIO card holder scheme? What are the conditions that you will have to fulfill to get this OCI card? That is something that you will have to revise, can be important for your upcoming examination. Clear? Let's look at something else. The larger message to New Delhi from the Red Sea. And we will link this column written by Professor Happy Mount Jacob with another interview given by Mr. Vijay Gokhale, who was the former Foreign Secretary of India. Something is happening, which we have discussed previously, in the Red Sea. October 2023, Hamas waged an attack on Israel, crossed the Hamas-Israeli or the Gaza-Israeli border, killed thousands of individuals, more than 1,000, took lots of more than 250 children, elderly women as hostages, and it led to chaos in the Middle East. The war on Gaza by Israel is continuing, which has led to the destruction of property, hospitals, and killing of thousands of people. South Africa has taken Israel to International Court of Justice, saying Israel is committing genocide on the civilians in Gaza. But now in this theater, we see another important player emerging, which is Iran. Irani-backed Houthis, who are basically Shia militants from Yemen, it has been mounting attacks on the vessels which are passing through the Red Sea. And Red Sea is an important route if Asian goods have to travel to Europe. Otherwise, they will have to take a longer route through Africa, through the Atlantic Ocean, and then reach Europe. Red Sea is important. And India is also now affected by these Houthis in Red Sea. How? There was one tanker or one vessel which was coming from a port in Saudi Arabia to Mangalore port in India. This was carrying oil and chemicals. This was attacked by the Houthis. There was another vessel which was basically carrying crude oil. It was having the Indian flag. It was also attacked by the Houthis. How did India respond? India responded in two ways. One, militarily, by sending missile destroyers in this area, and also by sending External Affairs Minister Dr. S. J. Shankar to meet Iranian counterparts because Iran has influence over Houthis. And Iran and India share historically good relations with each other. How? I will give you one instance. 1992. And just before this 1992 event, something happened in India. There was BOP crisis, balance of payment crisis, which was precipitated by the Gulf War. There was a war between Iraq and Kuwait in 1991, which spiraled the crude oil prices in India, which led to balance of payment crisis in India. And unfortunately, India had to mortgage its gold. There was another challenge. Our friend, Russia, was in agony because Soviet Union was dismembered. It collapsed and emerged into different countries, independent countries. So our friend, Soviet Union, got dismembered. Russia emerged as a separate country. And amidst all of this, there was one organization called OIC, Organization of Islamic Countries, which was trying to do something on Kashmir. What was the agenda? OIC, supported, backed, piloted by Saudi Arabia and Pakistan. They wanted to push a resolution in United Nations Commissioner for Human Rights, saying India is committing atrocities, violating human rights in Kashmir. This resolution, if it was adopted by OIC, it would have been sent to United Nations Commissioner for Human Rights. And if UN also would approve it, then this matter would be sent to United Nations Security Council. And then United Nations Security Council could have imposed economic sanctions, security sanctions on India. And please remember, this is the time when there was BOP crisis in India. We had to mortgage our gold, and Russia, our friend, could also not be in a position to help us because Russia was dealing with its own set of problems. Mr. Dinesh Singh, he was the External Affairs Minister. He was admitted to a hospital in Delhi, but he was woken up, was put on a military plane, and in a turbulent weather, he reached Iran, the capital Tehran. Why? Because the Prime Minister, P.V. Narasimha Rao, wanted External Affairs Minister Dinesh Singh, even if you are sick, please take this flight, go to Iran and give my personal secret letter to the President of Iran. What is that letter? We don't know. But it was primarily meant to ensure that OIC resolution fails so that this matter does not reach the United Nations. And at United Nations also, P.V. Narasimha Rao decided to use his another diplomatic power. It was a Congress government. But the P.V. Narasimha Rao government asked the leader of the opposition, Atal Bihari Vajpayee, please go to UN and defend your country. Not just you, Salman Khurshid, you are the Minister of State for External Affairs. Please accompany Mr. Vajpayee. Farooq Abdullah, you are the former Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir. Your state is under assault. Please go and travel with them and defend the human rights record of India in Kashmir. OIC resolutions have to work in consensus. Whatever decision is to be taken by OIC, that works on consensus. If there is no consensus, there is no resolution. And Iran scuttled this resolution. This resolution could not pass, matter could not go to United Nations, and we were saved from diplomatic harassment. And since then, and even before that, Iran and India have been sharing good relations with each other. So this threat of Houthis in the Red Sea, this threat may disappear very soon. Why? Because Houthis are under the grip of Iranians. Iran and India share good relations with each other. So this problem will be solved. But what about a larger, bigger problem, according to Professor Happy Mon Jacob? What is this bigger problem? You might have heard of two-front war. What is that two-front war? Experts say India we have an all-weather friend of Pakistan, which is China. What if both China along the line of actual control, Pakistan along the line of control would attack India together at the same time? What are we going to do? That's what we call the two-front war. Professor Happy Mon Jacob says, forget about that traditional two-front war. We are facing a different two-front war, which is China from the maritime and China from the continental side. That means through the land, there is threat of China. And we have witnessed the clashes between India and China in Doklam in 2017. Doklam is a tri-junction between India, Bhutan and China. We saw these clashes. We saw the clashes along the line of actual control in Gogra, Hot Springs, Pangong Lake, so many different places, 8 fingers in line of actual control. So that is on the continental side. But on the maritime side, China is also trying to encircle India. Look at what is happening in Maldives. Maldives is under the lap of China. The military junta in Myanmar is under the lap of China. Bangladesh is also getting significant investments from China. Sri Lanka is getting significant investments from China. Pakistan is an all-weather friend of China. In Djibouti, which is near the Horn of Africa, we have a military base of China. Although in Hambantota port in Sri Lanka or the Gwadar port or the Sitwe port, these are not military bases, but tomorrow they can be converted into a military base. So the two-front war that India should be focusing on is not Pakistan and China coming together. It is China trying to encircle India on the continental side as well as on the maritime side. And for that, what do we need to do? December 2023, against the attacks by Houthis on the Red Sea, United States and various other countries decided to launch an operation. That operation is known as Operation Prosperity Guardian. Can be important for your prelims examination. Operation Prosperity Guardian is related to which of the following? It's related to US-led attack on the Houthis because they were attacking the Red Sea. They were choking the Red Sea. India did not participate in that. Professor Happy Mon Jacob says this may have been wise decision today, but tomorrow, what happens tomorrow? Mr. Vijay Gokhale says China is now beginning to feel or has already felt that India is tilting towards US. So previously, during Pandit Nehru's time, when we started this non-aligned movement, our foreign policy was we will neither align with the US bloc nor will we align with the Soviet Union bloc. We will chart our own independent foreign policy. But now China is beginning to feel that India is tilting towards the US. How? Look at Quad. India, Japan, United States and Australia coming together in this quadrilateral, which China views it is basically to counter us in Indo-Pacific region. Not just this, the Malabar exercise, which is basically a naval exercise between these 4 countries, India, Japan, Australia and United States. Initially, it was a bilateral naval exercise between India and US. Later on, Japan also joined. Later on, Australia also joined. Then Australia left. Then Australia came back. So long story short, there are 4 navies of 4 countries which are involved in this naval exercise known as Malabar. The sense that China is getting is that India is tilting towards US by being part of Quad Malabar exercise. Basically, this is to counter rising Chinese influence in the Indo-Pacific region. And for that, we need to be prepared because we may not have joined this exercise, Operation Prosperity Guardian, but tomorrow we may not be left with any choice because we have to join something to counter the rising influence of China, because China's threat is not only through the continental side, but also through the maritime side. That's what you need to understand from these 2 columns and the interview. Let's look at another column analyzing the rising gap in incomes. There is a report by the State Bank of India. According to the State Bank of India report, the inequality is reducing in India. How do we measure that inequality? Gini coefficient, whose range is between 0 to 1. If it is 0, it means perfect equality. If it is 1, perfect inequality. Since 2014, 2015 till 2022-23, this Gini coefficient has fallen from 0.472 to 0.402, which means closely, if we calculate it percentage wise, there has been 15% fall in inequality in Gini coefficient. And State Bank of India says inequality is now steadily declining in India. But according to this column, this may not be the correct way of understanding inequality in India. Why? Because this article says these details have been taken from the taxpayers' data. By analyzing the taxpayers' data and how much tax they have deposited with the government, we have come to a conclusion, according to SBI, that inequality is falling in India. There is a rise in incomes across different levels in India. But this column says this may not be the correct way of analyzing it, because this data is captured from the taxpayers' data. But majority of our population is outside of the tax net. In fact, 80% of income earners in India, they earn less than 2.5 lakh per year. On top of that, when we look at the labor force survey, according to that, yes, there is a rising income. Income is rising, has risen spectacularly, but only for the 10% of the top earners. That means those who are at the top 10% of the earning list, their incomes have significantly increased over the past 1 decade. But what about those at the 30% bottom? Their incomes may also have increased, but it is not a sharp increase. The sharp increase you will see in the top 10 bracket. In fact, what this column says, this Gini coefficient, it is basically falling for those who are wage earners. The salaried class, the Gini coefficient is falling, which is a good thing. That means inequality is reducing. But this Gini coefficient is increasing, rising for those who are self-employed. What about women? What do you think? Is the women's participation in the labor force participation rate increasing or not? What is this labor force participation rate? Basically the percentage persons who are in job or actively looking for job or available for job. The argument given is that since there is an increase in the percentage of women who are in the labor force, who are looking for job or actively looking for job, or who are already in the job, since that percentage is increasing, which means the income of a household is also increasing. But according to this column, women, yes, they have got increased opportunities, but it is mostly in low paid jobs. It is mostly as self-employment. So just by looking at the taxpayers' data, which SBI, State Bank of India, is doing, and by looking at this taxpayers' data, if it is coming to a conclusion that inequality has reduced in India, it may not be the perfect way to look at this data. Maybe, yes, inequality has been reducing, but it is reducing faster for those who are at the higher level of incomes, not for those who are at the bottom, and specifically not for women. In fact, this column basically says that there is something called as polarization. Those who are at the top 10%, their incomes are rising, but those who are at the bottom, their incomes may be rising, but not significantly. And incomes of those are rising who are in the wages, segment, who are the wage earners, who are the salaried class. But those who are part of the self-employed systems, their incomes have been falling. And at the same time, we are looking at this polarization, which ultimately may not be significant to contribute. This may not be the right thing to contribute, that incomes are rising and inequality is falling in India. That is what you need to understand from this column. Clear? Let's look at another column, gender equity in education, the need to focus on early childhood education. March 8 is celebrated as International Women's Day. And this is the day when the spotlight is on women, the 50% of the world population. Commentaries are made on the significant strides made by women in politics, the rise of women politicians in politics throughout the world, the rise of women leaders in the industry throughout the world, the positive strides that women have made when it comes to universal adult suffrage, where women have the right to vote, women have the right to contest elections. Because this right to vote was not given to women in Switzerland till 1970s, in US and Britain till 1920s. So there has been a significant progress made by women. But what about the condition of women in the education segment, in the education sphere? That is what this column is trying to highlight. And this column says there are 4 interesting facts which have emerged. Fascinating facts. Fact number 1, on learning outcomes. That means once you are taught in the school, then you are taking tests, for example. Is there a significant gap between the performance of a boy and the performance of a girl? How do we know that? By looking at this National Achievement Survey of 2017. It covered 22 lakh students. It basically showed that there is a parity. Parity in the sense, what is the average test score in mathematics for boys and girls who are in class 3? Same, 63. Boy average 63, girl average 63 in class 3 mathematics. Class 5, same, 53. That means there is a parity, which means girls are performing, their learning outcomes are at parity with the learning outcomes of the boys. In fact, forget about class 3 and 5. In any other class that you pick, the difference would not be more than 1 percentage point. Learning outcome, parity. If there is a parity in learning outcomes, then girls in India today are more educated than they have ever been. But the gap reflected in mean years of schooling has worsened. If the learning outcomes are the same, but how do we judge another parameter, which is the mean years of schooling? From class 1 to 8, for example, what is the mean years of schooling? For how many years does a boy enroll in a school, a girl enroll in a school? That's what we call mean years of schooling. Look at the data. Over the past 2 decades, the mean years of schooling for girls has almost tripled. It was 1.7 years in 1990. That means mean years of schooling, 1.7 years. Now it is 4.7 years in 2018. The mean years for boys is also increasing. That means it used to be 4.1, now it is 8.2 years. That means for boys as well as girls, the mean years of schooling have been increasing. But even now, look at the gap. That means the gap between boy and a girl used to be 2.4 years in the 1990 average mean years. Now this gap has increased to 3.5 years in 2018. If learning outcome is the same, why is there still a gap in the mean years of schooling between boys and the girls? Same number of mean years of schooling for boys as well as girls. But look at the gap in India, 3.5 years. Not just this. Dropout rate for boys in class 1 is marginally higher. It's 6.88 as compared to 6.38 for girls. Okay. But this trend radically decreases by class 8, which means the dropout rate amongst girls is twice the number of boys. That means more girls are dropping out by the class 8 as compared to boys. Isn't then there institutional bias against a girl child? Not just this. More boys than girls tend to be enrolled in private institutions. And in private institutions, I will send my boy to a private school, which basically means I will incur out-of-pocket expenditure. Basically, higher tuition fee, other amenities. But the standard destination for a girl child is a public school. These are the trends that we have seen when it comes to women in education space, and this reflects and highlights the societal gender biases. So what do? It is time that we focus on early childhood education. We have been focusing on elementary education from class 1 to 8. We have also been focusing on the secondary education, class 9 and 10. But we need to focus, if we need gender equity, we need to focus on early childhood education, which means early childhood education between the ages of 3 and 7. Why? Because this is where gender norms are ingrained. This is where the children, they find and they understand identities, behaviors, and stereotypes. In the sense, there's a boy, listen to me carefully, there's a boy, there's a girl. You have to present them, gift them a birthday present. Look at the stereotypes. For a girl, you will give a Barbie doll. But for a boy, you will give a gun, toy gun. And at the same time, if a boy does something good, you say, brave boy. If a girl child does something good, cute girl. Why can't girls also be brave? This is basically socialization at an early childhood age. You are ingraining into the mind of this boy that you are meant to be brave and you are meant to be protective and protecting this girl child. So whenever the girl child would move out of the house, you would tell your boy child, please go and take care of your sister. Which means sisters, women, girls are always meant to be taken care of. Which means they will not have an independent existence. In fact, we have divided colors as well. Blue for a boy, pink for a girl. In fact, jobs also. Girl child, tomorrow you will have to become a doctor. You have to become a nurse. You have to become a teacher. But boy, you can become an engineer. You can become an architect. You can be part of the military. So this stereotyping, this early socialization through which you are creating these gender stereotypes. This is happening at the early age of 3 to 7, and this is where we need to focus on. This is the right time to focus on, and that is how we can achieve gender equity in this country. That is what you need to understand from this column. And now we have 2 questions for your mains practice. Question number 1, with increased funding and an actionable roadmap, the Prime Minister's flagship Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao could be the ideal launchpad to kickstart the campaign for universal early childhood education across the country. Comment. It requires a social revolution. For example, what is the sanitation campaign, Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, launched by Prime Minister? It is basically a social revolution which is taking place. It is affecting the behavior of the people. So you have to touch the behavior of the people. Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao is also in the same direction. It talks about a social revolution. Increased funding, focusing on early childhood care, that's what is going to take us towards gender equity. Question number 2, as a rising power in the Indo-Pacific region, India is expanding its outreach in Southeast Asia and the South Pacific exponentially. Discuss in 250 words. Write answers to these 2 questions. Share it in the comment section so that we can pick them up. And if you have enjoyed this session, found something interesting in this session, please do let me know in the comment section. Do not forget to press the like button, subscribe to our channel if you haven't yet, and share the links of these classes with your friends and fellow aspirants. See you again tomorrow, 10 o'clock in the morning, with another edition of the Daily Hindu Newspaper Analysis. Thank you for being with me. Goodbye. All the best.